Hi viewers and welcome to the channel, and today we're going to be looking at creating this reflector type surface using the Lattice2 workbench. We're going to start with using a planar face, and then in the next video we're going to move to arc faces and then carry on with that through to B-spline surfaces as well. So this originally came from a request from a Patreon. I'm going to look at doing this as a written tutorial as well, and I'll be posting that on the Patreon site and also posting this video on both Patreon and on YouTube as well. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. So for this tutorial we'll need a Lattice2 workbench that can be added in the Tools, Add-on Manager, and we can find Lattice2 in there. I'm going to start off in the Sketcher workbench, and I'm going to create a new sketch along the XY plane. Now this sketch is only for dimensioning. To get the dimensions of our reflector correct, we're going to create a rectangle in here. Now it's important to understand what size our diamond is going to be. So when we do the reflector, we're going to repeat a diamond pattern across this shape here. So we need to make this the right proportions. To make our lives easier, I'm going to place a length across the top of 100 millimeters and also a length across the vertical of 80 millimeters. So we can use a diamond pattern of around about 10 millimeters to easily repeat across here and to fill these sizes. Let's hit close. I'm not going to extrude this, I'm not going to do anything with this. This is just for placement and attachment. Now I'm going to work on the pattern that's going to be repeated across here, and then we're going to take that pattern and repeat it downwards using a new sketch. But first of all, let's make sure nothing's selected. I'm going to place it on the same plane, the XY plane, and hit OK. I'm going to use the center point here. Now you notice I didn't fully constrain down the previous sketch. You should really fully constrain it, but I'm working at a speed here so we can actually get through the tutorial in the shortest time. You can go back and fully constrain that sketch if you desire. This pattern is going to be constrained because we're going to constrain it to the center point. And this is important because that means we don't have to place a placement dart against it. And we'll get to that in a minute. Using the create a polyline in the sketch, I'm going to constrain to these lines, these vertical and horizontal lines. I've got the auto constraints on and the avoid redundant constraints on as well. I'm going to highlight this line. You can see the auto constraint has taken effect. I've got point on line constraint, and I'm going to work my way across these lines as support for this diamond and connect up to this point here. We've got the constraint coming up, the coincident constraint, and we select on that. Now I can hit the right mouse button to get the mouse pointer back, or hit escape. We're going to set some length between these 2 points using the length. I'm going to set that to 10 mil. And we're going to do the same for the height as well, as 10 millimeters. We're now going to zoom in and adjust this so it's actually centered over this point. So I'm going to take this point and this point and this one and just center that. We get the redundant constraints come up. That's fine. I've just used these for support just to get us in place. We can click to select and you'll see a redundant constraint has been highlighted, this point on line constraint. That's fine. Let's just hit delete. That comes back into place. We can use the symmetrical constraint straight away if we so desire, but I tend to actually connect it up first, add in the necessary dimensions, and then refine the constraints afterwards. And we're going to take this point and this point. And the last point we want it to be symmetrical across is the center point. We'll get a redundant constraint here again, and we'll use create symmetry. This time I'm going to go up to the top and we can see this point on line constraint. If I hit click to select, we can see that selected a point on line constraint down here. So we just hit delete and that's placed that in line. I thought it was going to take the top one, but it's taken the bottom one. So that's now all constrained down. And we can move these out of the way if we want, just by click and dragging them. Let's hit close. We've now got this diamond in here. We're going to go over to the part workbench. We're going to extrude this to allow us to duplicate this across here. Well, to repeat it across here. Make sure that sketch is selected. So at the moment it's highlighted in white. Let's just click off and click again. Now it's in green, so it's selected. And use the extrude or part extrude. This will extrude it to a certain length. So we're looking at the length. We're going along the Z-axis. We've got nothing selected at the moment. It's along normal, so it's going normal to that sketch. So normal to the sketch is away from the sketch. That's fine. If it wasn't, then we can select one of these here. Now I'm going to extrude this by about 4mm and hit OK. So we've got that extrusion now. I want to create this as a diamond pattern, but I want to have some angle, so I want to draft this to the base to allow this to be angled. So I'm just going to zoom in and click the extrude, look on the data tab, and we've got a number of options down here. If I bring this up and work down to the taper angle, let's just bring this out. So I've double clicked this divider here to bring this out. We can set the taper angle. So if I set this to 20, this will taper the top outwards. We don't want the top coming outwards, so we set this to a minus value. So minus on here, hit enter, and that's tapered down to the bottom. We can go to an extent, say 40 degrees, and we can keep on going, but if we go over this, let's say 60, then this will go into error. So we just back this off a bit. I'm going to say I want this about minus 30 degrees. So it gives us this shape here. I'm going to zoom out, and now we're going to use the Lattice2 workbench to repeat this across this top edge. We are going to add some more diamonds to this, so we're going to add a diamond by the side, which will allow it to repeat downwards as well and give us the stepped pattern going across this object. We'll get to that in a moment. So now we come over to the Lattice2 workbench, which gives us the tools for repeating this object. Now, because we've built this around the center point, we don't need a placement dart or placement kite in here. So we don't have to worry about placement of this object, because I want the placement basically coincident or in the middle of the base face of this object. So I want it dead in the center here to place it across this object, this sketch. Now I need to create a lattice array across the top, a linear array across the top. So select that edge and then come over to the linear array or Lattice2, come down to the linear array. I'm going to go linear array span n. So we've got the linear array going across here. We've put 4 across here. Now I'm going to move this into this linear array by first selecting the extrude, control selecting the linear array, then come out to Lattice2, come down to populate with copies and populate with copies. So we've got the original object still here, and we've placed this across the top here. We need to increase the amount this goes across. We've got 100mm going across the top. These are 10mm, but it is offset back here. So we're going to come in to the new object along the top here in the tree view, and we'll click on the linear array. Now any modifications to this will affect our scene, but we may need to refresh it. We may need to go out to edit, refresh, or hit Control R. We've got the number of elements, so you can see there's 5 going across here, but we need to come down to the count because that is actually read only. So drop down to the count under the lattice series generator, and our count is at 5 at the moment. So if we go 10 and hit enter, we can see they've gone across there, but we've got a bit of a gap. So that's increase this by one more, 11, and click off. And those have all connected up like so. The next thing we've got to do is allow for this to go downwards. But we're going to hit a bit of a snag, because if we repeat this downwards, we're just going to be getting lines of these, but with no fill-in pyramids or kites in between. So what we can do is actually create a clone of this and place it inside here. We're going to have to swap out the extrude, which is really easy to do. So this is the reason why I've taken this route, because we can show you how to swap out different objects that the populate linear array uses. So first we're going to make the clone. Let's come over to the draft workbench this time. What will happen, we'll get this gridding on here. We don't need this, so we've got this grid pattern on the bottom. So just click that. That makes that grid disappear. Let's zoom in. We can see how these are placed. We need one in here. So what do? Well, we don't affect this. We affect our original extrude. So what I'm going to do is clone this to here and then create a compound and use that compound in the populate linear array. It sounds complex, but it's actually quite easy. First of all, we need the extrude. So our extrude will be in this populate linear array because we've created a feature with that, and our action is create this new object, and it's nested in here. So click that extrude. We can see this is highlighted. We can also click it from here, and that's highlighted the extrude. Come up to modifications and hit clone. That's cloned that extrude. So now we've got two extrudes, this one and the one inside. We can use the placement, or we can use a right click and transform. And we'll separate the object out. So we'll come bring this out, and you can see we've got two objects that are exactly the same. And we'll just place this by the side of this object. We can use the placement properties for a better placement of this, and actually a much easier placement. So we've got that in there, and hit OK. And we look at this extrude, we've got the placement here, so we can modify this placement. So it would have been 5 and -5 to place that there. So we've got those two. Now we need to place these together in a compound. So this joins the object together to use it as a single object. So come up to draft, drop down and select the part workbench. In here we have the tools to do this. We have the compound, which is shown here. And we drop this down, we've got a number of compound items here. If I hover over there, it says make a compound of several shapes. I'm going to use the actual part menu to do this, so it's much easier to understand where that is, because this will change depending on which setup you're on, how you've configured these toolbars, dragged and dropped them, etc. So we need to select the extrude and control click the other extrude. So they've both selected. Go to part, compound, make compound. That now is a single object which contains two children in there. So two of the extrudes, those are hidden. But we've still got this extrude here, which we need to swap out from the populate linear array. So if we look, come up to the top, we can see those are along the top. So how do we do that? Well, we just click on that populate linear array. We come down to the options on the data tab, and if we come down, we see the object extrude here. So that is populate copies, object extrude. Click on that, we see the three dots at the end. Click the three dots and hit clear. This clears out any pre-selection. If we don't do that, we can actually select multiples. Where it's got compound, click the compound and now hit OK. Looks like it hasn't done anything. If we go out to the edit refresh, we can see a tick by the populate linear array with the extrude. So edit, refresh, and we can see how that's been placed across there. So now inside the populate linear array with extrudes, we've got the compound and the linear array. I'm going to click that compound and press the spacebar just to hide it, and do the same with a linear array. Now we've got to duplicate this, well, repeat this down this edge. To do that, I can come back over to the lattice workbench. Now there's one thing that I've forgotten to tell you. If we place a linear array against here and click, I'm going to use make a linear array from the toolbar. If this appears, say somewhere up here, then all we have to do is come into the placement, open that up, and we've got the position here. And these should be zeroed because they've been attached to that edge. If it's not zeroed, just zero these out and that will place them correctly there. So we've placed this linear array across this edge, and at the moment it's pointing upwards. So I want to reverse these so the darts or the kites point downwards. If we come down, we've got the reverse option in here, so the reverse here on the data tab under lattice array. And it's just simply a case of clicking true, and that's reversed that. I'm going to repeat across these four. Obviously there's going to be gapping in here, but we'll sort that out in a minute. So to do that, click on the populate linear array with Extrude, control click the linear array so they're multi-selected in that order. Then come up to Lattice2, populate with copies, and this time populate with copies but build array. That builds an array across there like so. You can see the edges, we've still got these on these edges, so there's going to be a jagged edge here. We're going to sort that out in a minute. So we're going to come over to the new object here and expand it in our tree view and click the linear array. So we've selected the linear array on the left hand side. Come down to the count and increase this count to 8 because this is 80 millimeters long here. We may need to increase it by 9. Let's have a look and zoom in. So we've got that gapping in there. Let's increase this to 9. And now we've got this array of these objects. We haven't finished yet because though we've got the array of the objects, we need to create some kind of reflector shape in here. And we're going to be doing that next. Now it's worth taking this array and actually converting it down to a compound object. Now we've got this parametric downgrade. These are the same tools that are available in the draft workbench, but they offer a parametric version, which is really, really handy. I'm going to use the Lattice2 and the parametric downgrade, which is the same. And we're just going to downgrade that to leaves. So it downgrades and puts the results in a compound. So now we've got a compound to work with. This is all parametric, so we can come back in and change these if we so desire. Let's come over to the part workbench. What we're going to do now is convert this into our shape. Now to do that, I need something to use to actually convert that. So I need some kind of shape for my reflector. So we're now looking at what we want our reflector to look like. This is just going to be used as basically a cutting or a common pattern for it. I'm going to place that pattern against that shape. So although I've said I'm in the part workbench, we're actually going to be needing another shape to do that. We're going to be using these tools along here to place this pattern upon the shape. So let's come over to the sketcher and create the sketch. You can click on top and I'm going to create a new sketch along the same plane. Make sure nothing is selected first and we get our choose the orientation, which is the XY plane. Hit OK. Our sketch has been placed basically along the same plane as the bottom sketch. So when we use the section view, what will happen, we'll see the base of our pattern. So now I'm looking at, well, what do I want the reflector to look like? Well, let's place a circle in here, like so. Come out, place that circle. We can see that circle is upon there. We're going to make sure the circle is kept within this shape. So we're going to add anything in there. We could put a T in here or a square or a triangle, whatever we want. So I'm going to go for a circle. It's not within the sketch, but it's actually within this shape here. Let's hit close. and we've got this sketch selected. We can come over to the part workbench, and we're just going to extrude that sketch so it will pop through the top. 10mm. It's important that it actually passes through the top of the shape. Now if we look at where this extrude is sitting, it's sitting basically here. The face is upon the face. This is going to be no good for the common, because I'll show you this in case you actually come across this. We're going to create a common between these two objects. If I select both of them, doesn't matter the order, and come up to part and come down to the boolean and use the intersection, what will happen, we'll get our object, but you notice that there's a lot of spaces in here. So this is no good for us. So we'll just delete that common. What we need to do is move this down. So if I select that extrude, we need to make sure this is beyond the bottom. So it encapsulates this object. So click on the extrude, right click, transform, and we can just move this down slightly so that is poking out the bottom there. Now we hit OK, and we take the extrude, control click those leaves, and then come up to part, down to the booleans and intersection. We have now got our object, so our common there, and we've got our reflector in the shape that we want. So now we can take this, which is the start of our reflector, and place it upon something, say a bracket or some kind of model, and we've got our finished reflector. So that's a reflector on a planar surface. We are now going to look at a reflector on a curved surface, so on an arced surface. We'll move to B-spline surfaces in a follow-up video, but we're just going to start with the basics first and progress through into more complex objects as we move forward. These here are still being shown as visible, so we can actually hide the sketch and click on this and press the spacebar as well. These are just nested inside these objects as we move down. So if we need to export that out, we can actually click on the common and go up to File, Export, and that allows us to export out this in any format that we want, such as STL. What I'm going to do now is look at the reflector, or this null surface, as an arc. So that's going to be in the next video. If you're a patron of the qualifying level or you're the original requester, you'll be actually sent that a link first before anybody else. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again soon. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.